Hello my darlings and welcome to this Booker Prize reaction to the Longlist vlog. That's a rough start. I've had 2 hours of sleep because of market volatility, so please excuse the lack of brain cells for this one. So I thought I'd just go through the list and tell you, my reactions to it. Because I live in Australia, I have already seen some things, so it's not a completely blind first reaction, but let's go through the list. So we've got The Shadow of the Object by Chloe Aridjis. This says it's about Flora, who is recovering from an operation in a Mexico City hospital where she befriends an elderly German woman, Wilhelmina, a collector of antique toys. The judges said they were charmed by the novel's meditation on friendship and grief, and its suggestion that the most meaningful truths can be found in the shadows. I think I might actually read the proper blurbs instead, because those were very succinct and a little bit ambiguous, and I believe this has more to it than that. I heard people saying that this was rather Kafka-esque, and having just read an entire vlog of Kafka-esque books, I'm a bit Kafka'd out, but sometimes that works for me, sometimes it doesn't. This was one I had not heard of before, so this was a new to me book. So it says, Flora is visiting home in Mexico when the family dog leaps up and bites her hand. She winds up in hospital where she undergoes several surgeries under anesthesia and meets Wilhelmina, an elderly German woman with pneumonia who collects pre-cinema toys and instruments. The two of them embark on a series of dreamlike conversations in the hospital corridors. Wilhelmina puts on a magic lantern show for Flora, leaving her spellbound. When things take an unexpected turn, Flora finds herself entrusted with an important mission. She returns to London, where she resumes her job polishing silver at a jewelry shop and strikes up a strange friendship with Wilhelmina's son Max. As Flora dips in and out of her imagination, she's increasingly aware it's not only the magic lantern that projects, and her perception of reality is subtly altered. I think this could be a surreal, weird fever dream book, which could land either side for me. I either enjoy those in their weirdness, or I just find myself utterly perplexed, confused, and unsure of what is going on. But only one of my libraries has this currently. I'm a member of 8 libraries. One has it, and it's just a physical book, and I'm 8th in queue. So even if everyone only has it for the 3 weeks and doesn't return it late, that's a 6-month wait for me. I am assuming though that now this list has been announced, at least some of the libraries might go and add these to their collection. So ebooks, audiobooks, that kind of thing, more physical books. So I will be on it to hopefully get a faster copy. Okay, and now we have Switzy by Emma Cline. This doesn't actually come out until September, but I had already had this reserved at my library, so I am first in queue. And as I said, I think the libraries might accrue more copies now that this list is announced, but this is one I was already interested in. So this is a portrait of an aging man's last pilgrimage. A private plane cuts through the winter night somewhere over Greenland. David, a retired executive, sits back in his leather seat, playing solitaire on his phone. The notebook in his jacket pocket is filled with familiar phrases and urgent reminders to himself, but he struggles to recognize his own handwriting. The world, once so knowable, has been rendered inscrutable. This is what David, his assistant, asleep in the seat next to him, will shepherd him along the voyage. A stopover in London, dinner with his adult daughter, a meeting in France with a friend. His final destination is Zurich. David glides through hotel rooms and airports, running out the clock of his mortal life. His grasp on the present slips away, and the past rushes as Sunday roasts of childhood, the stiff clothes meant for church, a summer at a friend's house, the losses and missteps that punctuate a life. This is about a man that is choosing to end his life. I am pro choosing when to clock out. If you are on a train of terminal illness or mental decline that is on a one-way track to absolute devastation, annihilation, you should get to decide when you jump off that train. I think people should be given to the choice. It's your life and you should get to decide. Your body, your choice. People in extreme constant pain with no end in sight should get to peace out if they want. That's my opinion on that. I know that if I was diagnosed with, say, advanced dementia or Alzheimer's, and I knew my time was coming to an end where I would still be myself, I would rather go out while I'm still retaining my faculties. And the same thing if I am in horrific pain with a terminal illness that is just going to degrade my quality of life until the end, I like to go out before I'm bedridden and still am able mentally once again to make an informed decision about that. So this is probably a book that I might enjoy. Emma Cline is so for me. She's hit or miss, so I'm not entirely sure if I'll like this, but this was already on my TBR. And then we have Helen of Nowhere by Makenna Goodman. I prefer the non-Fitzcarraldo edition cover. This is also a book that I already had requested from the library, so yay for that. It says, this is an electrifying dive into one man's fractured psyche as he searches for a new life. Taking place over the course of one day, Helen of Nowhere introduces an intimate cast, an unnamed man at the end of both his career and marriage, a young realtor showing him an idyllic house in the countryside, and Helen, the mystifying former owner whose spectral presence seems to imbue the house's every grain of wood. Through stories of the remarkable woman, the man is presented with an alternate way of life. But as evening fades into black, the specifics of how to live it become more than what he bargained for. I love the idea of this. That's the rain. I hope that's not too loud. This sounds fun. It sounds weird. I wonder how supernatural it's going to be, if it's more just philosophical and metaphorical. But this is one I'm excited about. I believe this is a shorter one as well, which is good because sometimes these lists can tend to have massive behemoth books, but that is a shorter one that I am very much looking forward to. And then we have The End of Everything by M. John Harrison. I'm excited for this because this is a sci-fi. Philip Tennant makes his living at the tide line, collecting artifacts that wash up from the channel. It's been years since the crisis changed everything, but its exact nature remains obscured. Government barely functions, the seas are full of new creatures. Europe has been mislaid. It feels like the end. Now Philip has fished out of the water an object he can't keep. A creature that keeps changing, an artifact he must take inland before it destroys everything he thinks he knows. This sounds fucking rad, bro. I'm excited. I will say already that I am pleasantly surprised by the variety of genres. Already, it's feeling like they've put some weird books in this year's selection compared to previous years. And I'm excited for it. That's one I'm very excited for. I didn't even know about it. I would have reserved that if I had come upon it myself, but this list has introduced it to me, so wunderbar for that. We have The Disappearers by Marlon James. I have not read any of this author's previous works. I'm aware that they are a former list nominee. So this is a novel about the murder of a gay man in 1980s Jamaica and its tragic consequences. 8 men in Kingston, Jamaica begin rehearsals for a play. The men are strangers to one another and each has a different reason for being involved, but they all share one inescapable. Some of these blurbs are not correctly grammatized. All of them are gay, a batty man in Jamaican argot, and all of them must contend with the dangers that such a truth lays bare. One night, a mob savagely attacks them, killing one of the men. For the survivors, their recovery is as much emotional as it is as their bodies heal. Each man grapples with the violence, the hatred, and the rage that the attack made plain. Some try to ignore what the attack has unearthed, while others double down on retribution. I am lukewarm about this. I don't like a lot of violence in contemporary novels. I've mentioned that before. I have a low threshold for it in litfic, for instance. So I'm not sure. That is not one that I would have picked up, and I haven't got strong convictions about enjoying it. We've then got The Renovation by Kenan Orhan. A woman discovers that her bathroom has been remodeled into a prison cell where she is an unlikely inmate. In Salerno, Italy, Delara spends her days caring for her aging father and her hypochondriac husband. Girlie, God, I feel for you. Since leaving her native Istanbul, she's been unable to find a job. Adrift, she becomes increasingly fixated on domestic improvement, specifically on the renovation of a second bathroom. When the work is completed, she enters and finds herself not in a bathroom, but in a prison cell, and a Turkish one at that. As she tries and fails to conceal the unfortunate discovery from her husband, she confronts the prison's other inhabitants, the buffoonish guards who refuse to believe her conundrum, the other women who begin filling the cells beyond hers, and the strange things that drift through the smell of the Bosporus. Her mother's voice calls to prayer. Has she gone mad? Is she the victim of a terrible prank? Is it a portal, a dream, a simulation? As she burrows deeper into her cell, her life beyond it begins to fall apart. Her husband disappears. Her father's grip on reality loosens. Political dictatorship threatens to destroy everything worth keeping. This sounds fun and fever dreamy and bizarre and weird, and I am actually looking forward to this one. Hadn't heard of it before, so this is a new to me book as well. May We Feed the King by Rebecca Perry. She's a curator who spends her time dressing the rooms of historic buildings to bring them to life. But in the lush private quarters of a medieval place, she finds herself so transfixed by the reign of an almost forgotten king that the edges of her life begin to blur. He's a reluctant ruler with no hunger for power, rushed to the throne after the untimely deaths of his older brothers. But it isn't long before whispers begin to fly around the court. And with the growing belief that the king is not fit for the throne, comes the idea that another might rule in his stead. This kind of already reminds me of the book with Maya, the Goblin Emperor, a little bit, with the reluctant king forced onto the throne because of the deaths of their family members. I'm mid about this. I'm mid. It depends. I don't tend to love historical without magic, so I like historical fantasy, historical horror, historical sci-fi, that sort of thing. But straight up historical, I'm not sure. I wonder if there's any magic in this. I don't think so, but I'm open-minded. The Vivisectors by Missouri Williams is a book I was already aware of and had already put on hold. In a famed but crumbling university city overrun by nature, where power is held in a fragile balance between academics and a contingent of rogue gardeners, the reclusive narrator of the Vivisectors spends her days propping up the career of her needy and fraudulent professor boss. Then a controversy ruptures her careful routine. Adam, a contrarian student and an obsession of the boss, comes into heated conflict with a young professor, with both men claiming discrimination. The crisis subsumes the university. This is reminding me of Stoner by Williams. Though the narrator is unmoved, not even the attempted suicide of her estranged mother has been enough to dispel her lack of engagement with the world. Apathy overload, bro. But when her boss commands her to befriend Adam, the narrator finds herself both caught up in the events threatening to tear the city apart and increasingly drawn to the alluring student at the heart of it all. What is this? Yeah, so it's weird. I obviously added it to my TBR previously just based on the cover. I think I saw an art cover and just went add. That's what I tend to do. Some of the times I won't even bother reading the synopsis. It's my first time reading the synopsis of it, but color me intrigued, bruh. I'm actually excited for that. John of John by Douglas Stuart was the only book that I knew with certainty that it would be on this list, and it is. Out of money with little to show for his art school education, John Callum MacLeod takes the ferry home to the island of Harris to find that not much has changed except for him. In the windswept croft where he grew up, Carl resumes his old life, caught between the two poles of his childhood. His father, John, a sheep farmer, weaver, and pillar of their local Presbyterian church, and his Glaswegian grandmother, Ella, who has kept a faltering peace with her son-in-law for decades. While Carl wonders if any lonely men might be found on the barren hillsides of home, seems like he needs to download Grindr, John is dismayed by his son's long hair and how he seems unwilling to be saved. As the seasons pass, everything is poised to change as the threads holding together the fragile community become increasingly entangled. I wasn't really interested in this. To be honest with you, it's not my kind of book. Based on the synopsis, it includes religion, which I don't tend to love. And father and son stuff is not books I tend to read about. I don't have any life experience with that. I'm just not interested. I'm more interested in mother-daughter or parent-child dynamics. So I will give it a go though. I am going to try all of the books my library does have. There are some that there is one book it does not have that's on this list, and that is All Them Dogs by Djamel White. It says this is about Tony Ward, who's landed back in Lucan with his chest puffed up and a chip on his shoulder. After 5 years in the UK staying out of trouble just like he'd been told to do, he'd returned home to his West Dublin estate, ready to reinstate himself into the gangland scene. But things are different now. Tony's old mentor is dead, and his best pal Kenny Boyle has gone on the straight and narrow. That won't do. So when an opportunity to work directly for Darren Flute Walsh, an enforcer of notorious crime boss Angus Lavelle, presents itself, it seems like a no-brainer. Flute Walsh is a far cry from the meek, quiet boy Tony knew in school. Working as his left-hand man offers a level of security against repercussions for the crimes he'd gone on the run for, as well as giving him away into the life he wants, but none of that stops the big man Lavelle making it clear that any trouble from his past will be Tony's alone to answer for. I wouldn't have wanted to read that anyway. I don't like gangland, mafia, crime, criminal books whatsoever. I'm sure there's violence in there or torture. So I'm not too upset that I'm not going to be trying that at all. Not interested in that one anyway. And then we have a book that I have already read and DNF'd, and that was Black Bag by Luke Kennard. An out-of-work actor accepts the role of a lifetime, sitting soundlessly in a lecture theatre, zipped into a large leather bag, to aid a professor's psychological experiment. What could possibly go wrong? This is about a penniless out-of-work actor who picks up a job working for Dr. Blend. How will Dr. Blend's students react to someone zipped into an oversized bag? Not much at all, to be honest. Sitting at the back of the lecture hall over a series of 4 lectures, the role eagerly accepted soon has unexpected consequences. A professor of posthumanism develops research questions of her own. In particular, how can you love someone secreted away inside a black bag? And the actor's childhood friend forms a vision for monetizing this new situation. Yes, so I picked this up because it was a weird book. I love weird books. And this was just so dull to me. People didn't really react at all to him being in a bag. They sort of just became acclimatized to it rather quickly and just ignored him. They did kind of treat him as a non-person though, I do remember that. But this was just, boring. I also don't love books that feature actors. It hasn't worked for me thus far. But this wasn't as bizarre and weirdo as I was hoping it was going to be when I picked it up. And I read half of it, I believe, and thought, I just don't care. I don't care at all about any of this. And I DNF'd it. I will say, if this does make it to the shortlist, I might give it another chance. I might. A book that I read and recently DNF'd is The Palm House by Gwendoline Riley. Laura Miller and Edmund Putnam have been friends for a long time. Theirs is a happy meeting of minds with long evenings spent huddled in an ancient pub by the Thames, where they share office gossip, reflect on their teenage passions, and lament the state of the world. Recently, Putnam has been harder to reach. He's lost his father and the magazine to which he has dedicated his life. Laura has her own problems, with a prickly mother and a tricky past. But as Putnam starts to sink into despondency, she must try to bring him back. This was about 2 people who love to shoot the shit over a pint at the pub. It was very dialogue focused. It was very short and quick and fast the way it was written. It almost felt like I was skim reading, if that makes sense. I didn't care. I read half of this book and I just didn't care about any of the characters in it. And it just felt like a nothing burger of a book to me. I don't think I would revisit that. It just didn't hold any substance for me. I wasn't that into it. And the last book is one that I would have not read because I have tried the author before, and that is The Things We Never Say by Elizabeth Strout. Artie Dam is living a double life. He spends his days teaching history to 11th graders, expanding their young minds, correcting their casual cruelties, and lending a kind word to those who need it most. He goes to holiday parties with his wife for 3 decades, makes small talk with neighbours, and on weekends takes his sailboat out on the beautiful Massachusetts Bay. He is by all appearances present and alive, but inside Artie is plagued by feelings of isolation. He looks out at a world gone mad, can relate, at himself and the people around him, and turns a question over and over in his mind. How is it that we know so little about one another, even those closest to us? And then one day he learns that life has been keeping a secret from him, one that threatens to upend his entire world. And once he learns it, he's forced to chart a new course and to reconsider relationships he holds most dear. I just found her other books really dull and basic, which is an unpopular opinion. I know this author is very well beloved, but for me, if I want to read sort of about everyday life in this very quiet, slow way, which focuses more on characters rather than plot, I'll pick up Claire Keegan. That's kind of how I felt about this. This book, if you want a physical copy, has a wait list of over 250, which is now the largest reservation waitlist I have seen at my libraries. I dare say that they will add ebooks now of this. It wasn't on Libby. Previously, they only had the physical copies of books, so I probably will be able to grab it because I've put a notification on that. I want to be alerted as soon as it's added to the catalogue. I just don't think I'm going to like that much. I believe those were all of the books. If I've missed one, I'll add it in post-editing. Out of the ones I have not yet read, and that I can because at the library, the ones I'm most looking forward to are the Vivisectors, the Renovation, the End of Everything, and possibly Switzy. I do think Helen of Nowhere and The Shadow of the Object also hold appeal to me. I am a big weird fiction reader. I like things that are odd and that are unconventional or that aren't predictable in regards to where the story's going to go. I especially love short books. And there's a few of those on here, which fantastic for the itty bitties. I'm actually kind of excited. I'm not going to do a dedicated vlog to this. There's plenty of impressive YouTubers who are doing that, who are much more learned and familiar with the booker than I am. But I will be reading these in my mood reading vlogs and letting you know my thoughts and opinions of them. I will DNF if I don't want to finish it, so I'm not beholden to completing every book in full. I don't need to do that. But I already have some that were already reserved because past Chanel did get them. I'm wondering though if, Switzy is going to get rushed now. So I know that some of these have a later publication date, and now that they've been nominated, maybe they will be published earlier than previously slotted. I'm sure they will. So that was the Booker Longlist. After the schmozzle that was the International Booker, which I was not a fan of whatsoever at all. I didn't have high expectations for this, but I am pleasantly surprised with the books that are on this list. There's some new ones too that I've been introduced to that seem up my alley, so that's amazing and great. Let me know which of these books is the most intriguing to you, or if you've read one that was fantastic that's on this list. Until next time, stay bookish, Star Child.